This is a big one, folks. The Supreme Court of the United States just struck down a major chunk of President Donald Trump's tariffs in a 6-3 decision that could reshape trade policy and potentially trigger billions of dollars in refunds. Welcome to the Big Money Show, everyone. I'm Jackie DeAngelis, along with my co-hosts David Asman, Marcus Lemonis, Brian Brenberg, and with us for the hour, Kaltbaum Capital Management President Gary Kaltbaum. Great to see you all. The ruling is that the president's use of the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, that's known as IEEPA, which he used to impose broad tariffs, was not lawful. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting. The ruling wipes out tariffs imposed under IEEPA, including those reciprocal tariffs on broad swaths of trading partners. The big question is, what is next? What will the administration do? How do you pay that money back if you have to? The court really didn't go there. Lydia Hu's been pouring through all this ruling this morning, and she's here to break it down for us. Hi, Lydia.
Yeah, hey, great to be with you, Jackie. I have been taking a look at this ruling, and you're right in that the Supreme Court, although they strike down the wide sweeping use of the IEEPA tariffs, they don't squarely address exactly what comes next. But based on precedent and how this usually flows through the procedure of our federal courts, this case would now be handed back down to the lower courts. In this case, it would be the Court of International Trade. And it's up to them to determine whether and how monies that have been paid pursuant to the IEEPA statute would be returned to companies. And as of right now, there are upwards of 1,000 companies or more that have already proactively and preemptively filed their claims to that court saying, hey, I want to be first in line to get my money back if the Supreme Court were to rule this way, as they have, striking down this tariffs. Costco is one example. Bumblebee Tuna is another example. There has been a recent case that flowed through the Court of International Trade in which a similar situation presented itself. The Supreme Court struck down a different type of tax. It was a maritime tax, and it handed the case back down to the Court of International Trade, and they set up a process by which it established a refund for claimants, similar to this to what's happening here. And in that case, they oversaw the refund of roughly $700 million. But I can tell you, Jackie, it took them roughly 2 years to oversee the refund of all that money. And what we're talking about in this IEEPA situation, some estimates say the projection is the money collected through IEEPA would be roughly $170 billion. Some estimates I have seen even more. So it remains to be seen what the process would be like to oversee the return of billions of dollars to 1,000 claimants or more. A much different situation, but that is the big open question at this moment.
Okay, we will get to the open question with the panel, but Lydia, while I have you, I just want to drill down on the ruling itself because I found this interesting, that the Supreme Court did say the way the president enacted the IEEPA tariffs was to them a tax and therefore not, able to be upheld. But they didn't say that he couldn't do, they said he couldn't do these broad sweeping tariffs, but you could use IEEPA if you were more granular in your approach. You could use other statutes that are out there as well that the president used in his first term to impose tariffs, but that you had to be laser focused. You had to say which country it was, why it was an emergency with that particular country, and why you were going after them, rather than sort of this sweeping range of tariffs. And I thought that was important, that distinction, because it gives him power to move forward, and the other countries are going to realize it might take some time, but he can still do this.
That is correct. The question that was before the court is whether President Trump can use IEEPA to impose tariffs, and it really came down to the interpretation of two words that are included in the IEEPA statute, because it does not expressly say you can impose tariffs. It says it includes the power to regulate importation. So the question was, does regulate importation include the power to impose tariffs? And the Supreme Court says no. But that doesn't mean that President Trump cannot still continue to use tariffs as part of his kind of approach to governing. And in fact, the administration has been very clear. They are ready and they have a plan B. Kevin Hassett was just on this morning talking about that plan B. They're going to rely on other statutory provisions. Section 301 is one that they've spoken about quite a bit. Those other provisions, they're not quite as flexible as IEEPA. They do have some limitations, but I would say we should all be ready and prepared to hear about the plan B that is forthcoming from the Trump administration.
I think you're right, Lydia Hu. Thank you so much. So let's all dig into this here. David, I'll start with you. It was a 6-3 decision. The dissenters were Alito, Thomas, and Kavanaugh. Not particularly surprising there. But I will say this. I'm not a person that will all of a sudden, start criticizing the Supreme Court because I didn't get my way on a particular decision. What they did was go specifically by the statute, and that's what I expected them to do. So I'm not shocked by this ruling per se, but I'm not really sure that in the scheme of things it matters. The market is not falling out of bed over this. I do think it's a very tricky, confusing issue about how you return these funds, if they're returned at all. They were not specific on that. But the president accomplished what he wanted with the tariffs. The sweeping tariffs that he put out brought everyone to the table. They negotiated. Yep. He got some of those non-tariff trading barriers to be removed from these countries. And so now they also realize he's got another avenue to go down if he wants to play hardball. I think that, to me, this is almost a non-issue, aside from the importance of the Supreme Court setting precedent on how you can use it.
I know you're a lawyer, but that is the smartest legal political explanation for what has just happened that I've heard so far today. And what the president wanted to do was to change a trading structure that was essentially developed after World War II to help the world recover from a world war. There hadn't been a fundamental change of that policy where we were working so hard to help primarily Europe, but also we did it with Japan and other countries around the world. And so many of those policies, which may have been very important in the 40s and the 50s and even up to the 60s, had become archaic. They become an old rear view mirror from what did happen, from the way the world used to work, not the way the world is working now. Trump wanted to change that. He did. For all of the bombast from the Trump administration about how they were expecting to win this, I know that there are people in the administration who felt that they were not going to win this. So they have all kinds of plans already in place. The problem is those plans are going to take a while to put into place. It's going to take a long time for them to come up with the studies for whether they use 338, 301, all of the number
I've
tariff
heard at
rules.
least a year.
Yeah, it's going to take at least a year to get this. So it's going to be frustrating for the administration. It likes to get things done immediately, but I think we'll get over it. And as you say, the market is digesting it all pretty well.
I just want to highlight that the president is going to be giving some remarks at 12:45, so we will take him live to hear what his reaction is to this. But Marcus, I heard you talking earlier on the news channel about this specific issue, and I wanted to dive into this. What comes next? They were not specific about returning the money. So what does come next? Consumers paid some of that. Businesses are going to want some back. How do we handle this?
Well, we spent a lot of time talking over the last couple of months that we thought if this did get reversed, would the court say you don't have to give any of the money back, we're just not going to charge it going forward? That still is a possibility. The government says they have the money to give it back. I think the problem is going to be who does it go back to? And that's the problem. You have all these small businesses, medium, large businesses like Costco and the one on Main Street asking for the money back. It's going to disappoint a lot of people. It's not going to go back to them. I don't know that I agree with you on it's going to take a year to put some other action in place. I would have to assume that those folks in the administration who anticipated that there was risk are going to look at 301 the same way they're looking at China. And it's important for the American folks to know that China does not get off the hook here. 301 is still very much intact. 232, which is impacting Canada the most, is still very much intact. So what countries really win here? Well, the UK came out this morning and said they're very happy that the court now understands how to do all these things. The money's going to flow. I just don't know when, if ever.
I'll add to 301 and 232, Brian, that he used in his first term. There's also the Tariff Act of 1930, Section 338 and Section 122. Under 338, if there's discriminatory actions between countries upon us, you can impose a 50% tariff. Under 122, if there are large or serious deficits, you can impose a 15% rate for a certain period of time. So those are two more options that are on the table. Marcus is probably right. They probably have truncated a long timeline here by getting a jump on this as the decision was being mulled over by the court. Your thoughts on the president moving forward? I wonder if he exercises these options, or I go back to my first thought, which is he essentially got what he wanted. You always use the thing in the car with the kids. I'll turn this car around. He turned it around, and they know that he will.
Yeah, they're already heading home. We're not going to Disney World, everybody. That plan has changed. The Tax Foundation, you mentioned all these codes you can use. Okay, there's so many of them. Tax Foundation, not a fan of the tariffs, but they did say he could use Section 122 to basically recoup between 50 and 75% of the revenue that he's already planning to get on these tariffs. So here's what I love. The left is like, yes, this is a win. We have defeated Donald Trump. And like, he's going to reform, 80% of what he's done already if he wants to. It might be a little harder for him. It is not going to stop him. But here's the part nobody talks about. And I think this is like the long-term thing that really matters, okay? So who decided against the president here? It was the Chief Justice, and it was Gorsuch, and it was Barrett, okay? And then it was the three liberals, right? What did the liberals have to do to rule against Trump in this case? And they knew they had to do this, and they hate it. They had to line up on the side of the major questions doctrine.
Yes.
Okay, now, and how do you know they know that? Because in their concurrence, what they say is, we think the ordinary tools of statutory interpretation support today's result. We do not join the part of that opinion invoking the so-called major questions doctrine. Sorry, but you did. That's the side you're on. Their Trump derangement syndrome caused them to rule against the very thing 3 years ago in West Virginia versus EPA they wanted to support, okay? Now, you can say they don't care about consistency. They'll just go whichever way they want to. Fine. But now their names are on a decision that says the administrative state can't run amok. Did it work against what Trump wanted here? Yes, it did. But if you love liberty and constitutional government, these guys do not, in my view, they just supported constitutional government and liberty. And I think Trump got a big win there, and nobody's giving him credit for it. I don't even think he's giving himself credit for it right now.
I'm going to do the totally non-legal thought process here, not bring up any code 301s or 275s and things like that. It seems like the Supreme Court said you can't do these tariffs. Oh, but by the way, you can do tariffs.
Right.
Last I looked, the President of the United States right now is Donald Trump. He's not taking a step backward. He's not taking a step sidewards. He's just going to move forward and do whatever he wants to do. Probably less so. But I don't think much is going to change going forward. I don't think we're going to get any, and thankfully, 150% tariffs. I actually think it's a good thing because we still do have to go back to who Congress and taxes, not out of the White House. Good to see that. But the fun part's going to be the refunds. Yeah, try getting any money from the federal government paid back to you.
Right.
See in the year 2037. That's what I think's going to go on there. There already, I believe there's one coalition of 800 small businesses already out with an 8-pager, give us our money back. They didn't use any 4-letter words, but they just said, give us our money back. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So I do believe we're going to have a free-for-all going forward, and I think we're going to be back to business. And we keep hearing about Plan B. I think we're probably going to stay with Plan A, just to lesser so, because the Supreme Court, regardless if the president said this was a disgrace, they still do matter.
On the refunds, my assessment is that this will get tied up in court. So those small businesses are going to try to fight the Trump administration. Nobody tomorrow is taking out a checkbook in the federal government to voluntarily try to parse through what will be a very difficult process. And once you go through the court system, it will get tied up there for some time to come. So I'm not really thinking that they're too worried about that right now. In some ways, it was good that the court, for the Trump administration, that the court didn't get into the specifics of that because it gives them an opportunity to kind of buy some time and figure out what they're going to do. But when I'm thinking about this, most of the trade agreements that we've seen, countries sort of came and they kissed Donald Trump's ring and they reversed things that were annoying him that didn't necessarily have to do with tariffs per se. So as I said, he's already won. But the big outlier in the room is China. Any thoughts on how China's looking at this decision today and saying, we're your toughest opponent. We might actually be what all this tariff nonsense was about. You were coming after us. us, and we haven't necessarily come to terms with you. Does this strengthen, David, China's situation or their position to fight back against the president?
You know, the Chinese have as many spies in America as we have in the whole world, and that's where they're using their human capital primarily right now. And I think everything that everybody has said here, as brilliant as it all has been, is something that they are already keyed into. They know how long it's going to take. They know that there are other options that President Trump has besides IEPA. They expected him to lose with the Supreme Court. So I think they have it all planned out right now. Their major concerns are, as always, stealing as much intellectual property as they can to keep pace up with the most innovative country in the earth, and that is the United States. So I don't think it's going to change much there. I should say, though, that the question of the emergency, IEPA it's an emergency, international emergency is the essentially what IEPA means. And the Supreme Court didn't specifically say what the emergency was that President Trump, and whether or not they disagreed with that actually being an emergency, but that's basically what they were saying. He just wanted to use the tariffs to get things done, to change policies without there being a real emergency. Again, there may be a specific point. I haven't seen it so far. If anybody here has, I'd be interested in knowing, but I haven't seen them specifically say that there was an emergency of any kind that President Trump was pointing to.
I just want to bring you this from our senior White House correspondent, Jackie Heinrich. She said, according to a source outside the administration on the president's reaction to the tariff ruling during a governor's breakfast, quote, an aide came in, handed him a note. He called it a disgrace, and then he went on with the remarks. Now, he is going to address it, and people are going to want to hear what he has to say. But yesterday, he was in Rome, Georgia, and he was drilling his message home on the economy because the midterms are just months away, and he's really trying to campaign for the GOP on this and get the message out that they have done, despite all of the tariffs, they have done so much for the economy. Can we listen to what the president said yesterday?
Airfares, hotels, car payments, rent, sports events, groceries. Everything's down. Everything's down. Dairy, eggs, potatoes, and chicken. Core inflation is now the lowest of any time in more than 7 years. The last 3 months, we've had the lowest inflation we have had in over a decade. The last 3 months, it's 1.4%. We had record inflation. You don't have it anymore. We brought back the American dream, and we have a country, I think, that within the next 12 months, maybe sooner, but within the next 12 months, it's going to be the greatest it's ever been.
So I don't think, Marcus, he's going to give this decision too much oxygen, but I think he's going to focus on that message.
He should. Here's what I have not heard today. What's the Fed going to do now? Because they've been saying we can't lower rates because we think inflation is still an issue. We think inflation is an issue because of tariffs. And if tariffs at the level that they were are no longer on the table, what is their argument now, next week, the week after, to not lower rates? The exaggeration that I felt happened a little bit in Georgia by saying everything was cheaper may actually come to fruition if the Fed actually makes this move. And I think we need to focus a little bit more on that. And if I was Trump, I would pivot to, see, I got the rates